Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Maludi Grasha, and I serve as an NXUnite team member at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel. Today's panel topic is Countdown to Giving Tuesday, Strategies and Tips. As usual, before I introduce today's panelists and we jump into this fascinating topic, I do have some quick logistics to cover. NXUnite by Nexus Marketing serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission-driven sector. On NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cost-driven podcasts. NXUnite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks with me here today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. So at any time during the panel, please feel free to submit your questions via the questions tab, or you can drop them in the chat if you want. And we'll spend the second half of the panel addressing as many as we possibly can. Now, if you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics questions, my team member Anton is in the chat under the Team NXUnite username, ready to assist you the best he can. I also wanted to share that this panel is being recorded, so for those of you watching live, you'll receive the recording via email after the session ends, and people can continue to register and access the recording after the panel. So if you have any friends in the industry you want to share the insights from this panel with, simply send them that same registration page and they will be able to access the recording. Finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I want to thank you all for attending this panel, whether you're joining us live or watching the recording. We're very excited to be in touch with you, the mission-driven community. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today to learn from these outstanding experts, who I will now finally introduce. I'd like to first introduce Adam O'Brien, who is the Director of Product and Growth Marketing at GoodUnited, a messaging automation platform for social media fundraising. With almost 15 years of combined enterprise, B2B, and nonprofit marketing experience, Adam brings his unique viewpoints on marketing and fundraising strategies through GoodUnited's Nonprofit Growth Lab and Facebook Fundraising Bootcamp series, and is a contributing author for Nonprofit Pro. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Hey, great. Excited to be joining y'all.
Wonderful. Also with us today is Betsy Oliver, who is the Director of Fundraising Services at Purpose Possible. With 20 years of fundraising experience, Betsy has seen lots of Giving Tuesdays. Much of her experience was in higher education on annual fund and leadership giving. For the past 4 years, she has worked as a consultant and is now the Director of Fundraising Service for Purpose Possible. So great to have you, Betsy. Also with us today is Matt Smith, who is the Director of Transformation and Innovation at Think Consulting Solutions. After a period volunteering as a childline counselor, Matt knew he wanted to use his skills to develop the third sector. He began specializing in community and events, and more recently has focused on fundraising innovation, product development, and managing large cross-team projects. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thanks, Malay. Really excited to be here. I've worked on Giving Tuesday since 2016, so it's a favorite topic of mine. Lovely to be here.
Fantastic. And finally, with us today is Morgan Gross, who is the CEO and fundraising consultant at Fundraising Beyond Borders. It was created to help international nonprofits fundraise with confidence. After traveling and creating award-winning fundraising campaigns across East and Southern Africa, Morgan learned the success of international nonprofits lies in customized fundraising plan, realistic fundraising goals, targeted messaging, and global donor engagement techniques. So glad to have you, Morgan.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now it's finally time to hear from our panelists. And Morgan, I'll have you start us off with the first question. Can you share insights on the evolving trends in Giving Tuesday campaigns and how nonprofits can adapt to these changes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thank you again for having me. Really excited to be here. And Giving Tuesday, like Matt, and I'm sure most everybody else here, is one of my favorite times of the year. We'll probably talk about it often. Some nonprofits, and you hear other people talking about how it can be really noisy time, but I actually think it's a really exciting opportunity to launch your nonprofit mission and get people engaged. And the numbers are there, right? The proof is in the pudding when I think it's $3.1 billion was raised last year with a 15% increase, which is just like remarkable. And as an international fundraiser, it's spread across 90 different countries. So it's really a global movement. And one thing that I really like to take notice a lot with my clients is not only just a Giving Tuesday trend, but just an overall fundraising trend to consider is, unfortunately, but there's a lot of things that we can do about it. Donor retention rates are down, and just overall giving is down this year. So what can we do about it? And that's kind of where your fundraising math comes in when you're planning and creating your strategy for Giving Tuesday. You're going to want to work a little bit harder to retain those donors from last year. So putting a plan in place for stewardship, and making sure those donors are engaged from last year and inspired and motivated to give for this year, but also working a little bit harder as well to bring on new donors. So creating some new creative strategies to bring new donors to your Giving Tuesday strategy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for starting us off, Morgan. Adam, I'm going to bring the same question over to you. What are some evolving trends in Giving Tuesday campaigns and how to adapt these changes?
Yeah, thanks for tagging me in. And I'll come from it, for most of my answers, not all of them from the social media perspective specifically. One of the biggest things that we're seeing, not only in nonprofit, but really across the wider, really B2B space and marketing, is understanding how to use, we'll say, less cookie cutter content. And what I mean by that is people are looking to collaborate with influencers, and influencers can mean a lot of things, right? That can mean people who hold a strong voice for us in the nonprofit space. And how are we working and engaging with those people? How are we telling the stories that relate to our supporter base or our donor base to re-engage? It's not just about what I like to refer as turning and burning. Like, let's make the ask for money every day and let's keep on doing that through November. No, it's about, you touch on this idea of planning a story. And that's done through influencers. It's done through encouraging user-generated content, or UGC. I believe I saw a stat this week. 48% of Americans say they're more likely to watch user-generated content on social media than they are to watch movies and televisions on streaming services. You think about how much time is spent on places like YouTube, which is the home of UGC, in my opinion. People are consuming upwards of like an hour or 45 minutes to an hour a day. I'm guilty of it. That's where I go to get a lot of my news. So like you think about using those things as short form video content as well. I think about Instagram Reels that have like the captions on screen, silent viewing. Like think about, like I'm guilty of it. I do it in my little office cubicle where I don't want sound on, but I want to watch a video. Those captions, you think about accessibility too, are so huge. So I think the emergence of that content that's maybe not necessarily created by your mission, as well as thinking about how do people consume content, that's going to continue to pave the way more and more as we go through Giving Tuesday. So that's kind of my little view from my niche.
Thanks, Adam. All right, Matt, over to you. Any insights on evolving trends in Giving Tuesday campaigns and tips in adapting to these changes?
Thanks so much. I'm so pleased Adam brought up the kind of the newer channels to the market, because I think the campaign lends itself so well to things like TikTok and the content environment that's on YouTube. I'm going to look at things from a UK lens to begin with, if that's all right, because that's where my expertise largely lies over the last 7 years or so. Everyone's throwing stats out, so I've got a stat for everybody as well. Last year in the UK, we raised £20 million on Giving Tuesday, which is a tremendous success. And we were the #1 trend on Twitter in the UK. It was still called Twitter then, so I can still call it Twitter. A couple of other trends that really came through for me in doing my research was the prominence of matched giving, particularly in the UK, and how it really does kick off a period of matched giving in the UK philanthropy circles. It's part of a wider, last year it was part of a wider campaign that lasted from the 28th of November all the way through to the 5th of December. And that really does spark, that big period where we get corporates and foundations and philanthropists to match that giving. So if the one takeaway from me today for everybody, look into those match giving programs, you can double the amount of effort that you put into a campaign. The second one for me is blending digital and physical stewardship. It's kind of counter to Adam's point around great channels, but I do still think it's a great moment for a lovely, personal touch, whether it be a handwritten letter or a phone call. Dare I say it? And some of the old ways are still the best. And I think that blending of digital and physical donor stewardship is really important. My third and final trend that I've picked up on, and yes, I largely work in the UK, but I do work across international markets as well. And I would say that each market treats Giving Tuesday slightly differently from my experience. And I think that's okay from whichever fundraising market you come from to try and lean into how your audiences will best respond. The UK is obviously not the US as much as we share in common. We don't have Thanksgiving and that natural kind of run-in. And we've always had Christmas as a massive giving period. And so there's a unique kind of moment in the UK calendar that Giving Tuesday sits in. Still incredibly successful, but we do have to think about it, from the lens of our own market. So there's a couple of things that I picked up on.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. All right, Betsy, final thoughts on evolving trends in Giving Tuesday campaigns and how to adapt to these changes.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. I think I'm going to come, everybody has given such great insight and I'm last. So I'm going to come from kind of a constituent and segmented based angle. So I think Giving Tuesday, as Morgan and others said, as much as it can be, somewhat maligned these days, is the proof is there, right? It's been going on for 11 years officially, $3.1 billion last year. But I think one thing that is a trend that I think is important for folks to think about and follow is how can you make Giving Tuesday not seem so overwhelming, right? It is awesome that it's this global phenomenon, but what could you do to make it really almost local? And here in Georgia, there's actually something called Georgia Gives Day, which is a way for folks in Georgia to really embrace Giving Tuesday itself. And that's a kind of a way to think about how can you put some community efforts in? How can you really kind of think locally, especially during this time here in the US, as Matt mentioned, we do have Thanksgiving and there is kind of the shop local, give local. And how can you kind of fold that in to continue with Giving Tuesday? The other thing is to make it easy for folks to give. I mean, we're really seeing trends in giving by Venmo, text to give, Apple Pay. And then, of course, people will want to, give online, write checks, social media. Adam talked a lot about, there's the donate button, there's the stickers you can do on Instagram. So how can you make sure that you are using all your various platforms to make it very easy for people to give on Giving Tuesday? As Matt and others said, of course, that's where you're going to want to kick off your match, right? You might want to do a power hour or something like that. That's all great. Just make sure that it's super easy to do. The other thing I would encourage folks to think about, and this is sort of a trend as well, I think that we're seeing, is this is not often a time, with the maybe exception of your challenge gift or your collective board giving, this might not be the day where you're seeing your major gifts come in, and that's okay. This is a great grassroots fundraising effort. I think I saw a stat that last year, 80-something% of social media users between 18 and 24 had heard of Giving Tuesday. Use that, right? You reach out to your younger donors. It might not be the day where you get $1,000, $2,500, $10,000. but that can be a really great way to get a that collective of smaller gifts.
Wonderful. Thanks, Betsy. All right, we're off to a great start. And Matt, I'll have you start us off with the next question. What strategies can nonprofits employ to ensure their Giving Tuesday campaigns stand out in a crowded landscape and remain impactful?
Thanks. So the first word that came to mind was creativity. I think it's back to a few colleagues on the panel have mentioned how crowded the marketplace can feel. And I think if you're able to bring your own organization's creativity, your own individual creativity to your campaign, that would be my first kind of thing to lean into. That can mean so many different things, but one example from a client that I worked with on Giving Tuesday last year was they really personalized their thank you letters to some of their major donors, and included, it was an animal welfare charity, and included postcards of their favorite dog or cat from the home. And so things like that, like going above and beyond when it comes to creativity, I think is a great first one. I think it was Adam who mentioned it earlier, but storytelling and really leaning into storytelling. I feel like it's one of those days that could just, we know what day it's going to be next year already. It's kind of, it lands in the calendar, and it can sometimes suffer, I think, from being that kind of cyclical event, but it doesn't mean that you can't bring your great stories to it. I was struck by some of the power of some of the stories that I saw last year from across the world. And in an age where, and I'm going to bring up AI here, you wouldn't have thought that on this panel AI would have got mentioned, but I'm going to find a way to shoehorn it in. I think this summer, obviously, AI has been the real big talking point kind of globally. And I think about an age where AI is coming through. You can't replace that human storytelling with a machine. I don't care how good it gets. And I think Giving Tuesday, the wonder of it is that it really brings out the humanity, really brings out that creativity, and almost kind of the counter to some of the AI tools out there. We still need great human stories told by great human fundraisers. And my last point has kind of already been made again, but I do think using newer channels, reaching newer audiences, I think will be a point that we continue to come back to. How can, the Giving Tuesday in 10 years time from now will be on channels that don't even exist now. That really excites me, but the campaign itself and the philosophy and the energy behind the campaign will outlast whatever channels we're working on. So I think looking at how we tell our great stories, our creative across newer channels is another thing that I'd bring to the table.
Thanks, Matt. All right, Betsy, over to you. How can nonprofits ensure their Giving Tuesday campaigns stand out and remain impactful?
Absolutely. So I think that using a little bit of humor can work. And I've seen some great ways that organizations have done this. I mentioned I worked at a school. I've worked in higher ed for many years before consulting. And one thing we would do is one of the places where I worked, we would send out an email to everybody on Monday, the Monday before, right? Just Cyber Monday, saying, don't give today. Right. And, that's not a subject heading you usually see. And then it would say, okay, if you really want to, go ahead, but we're really encouraging you to give tomorrow. We're trying to raise such and such, for these programs and this effort. And we'd love for you to participate, whether it's today or tomorrow or anytime this year. Please, be a part of our community and do that. So I think that was funny, and it was a big hit. Then I also think one thing that Matt mentioned, which is the importance of that human connection. A lot of folks do, even I was actually just at a meeting earlier this morning talking about doing an in-person phone-a-thon. I mean, remember those, right? So, if your space allows, gather together with some volunteers, some board members, whatever it might be, to hop on the phone and call a few folks, or even from your own home. Doing that on Giving Tuesday is, I think, a great way to, again, like I mentioned earlier, kind of bring in that community aspect of it. The other thing I would say is, again, finishing with a little bit of humor, send something the next day, right? On Wednesday. Because I think we all know the idea is to sort of kick off, if you will, the year-end giving. As Matt said, of course, December is such a big giving month as well. So send something on Wednesday. Say, you forgot to give, didn't you? Yeah. Okay. That's all right. We'll take it. I mean, something like that again evokes a little bit of humor, but that shows, yes, Giving Tuesday is super important and a great community day, great way to build community. But really, it's about, supporting the mission of this great organization. So.
Thank you for sharing, Betsy. All right, Morgan, over to you. Any tips on ensuring Giving Tuesday campaigns stand out?
Sure. So both Matt and Betsy have, shared really important things, and a couple things I'm just going to go a little bit more in depth into. When it comes to storytelling, you're just going to constantly hear that because that's what such an important aspect of any campaign. But when it comes to storytelling, I'm going to really encourage you all to keep it to one story. So if you're going to send out an email, talk about one specific story that is going to share that impact, that is going to maybe talk about the before and after, whatever it might be, but don't overwhelm a donor. Just talk about, one specific story that's going to engage them and inspire them that way. But something else that I really wanted to talk about, and I think we often forget about in Giving Tuesday or just campaigns in general, is often we think it has to be donate. It has to be just give now, or it needs to be financial support. Giving Tuesday is a really great opportunity to engage donors to become generous, right? To open up to have this sense of generosity. So making sure that donors have an option to express their generosity in multiple different ways. That might be donating. That might be being an in-kind donation. That might be volunteering, whatever that might be, that's specific and relevant to your organization, but making sure that it's also important to the donor. So letting the donor decide what they want to do, I think, is really important in providing those options. And then the last thing that I just wanted to touch on was something when it comes to your email marketing that I always love. It's one thing, to craft all these compelling stories and messages via email, but we got to make sure that they're opening those emails. So making sure that you have an engaging, a fun, you can add that humor in, like Betsy's saying, a really intriguing subject line. So making sure that subject line is going to get people to actually open the email, because their inbox is going to just be absolutely overflowed with emails. So, and that goes to, again, that stewardship of getting people engaged way beforehand is important. So start stewarding them now, making sure you're showing up in their inbox now, and then getting those creative subject lines going for that Giving Tuesday day.
Absolutely. Thanks, Morgan. All right, Adam, what would you like to add on strategies to ensure Giving Tuesday campaigns stand out?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll chip in with 3 don'ts as part of your strategy, since everyone covered the do's. Number 1, don't overspam or overshare. This actually flows into my second don't, is don't go into this without a plan. Coming from social media perspective, if you all have ever managed a social feed or even thought about posting more than 2 posts in a row, it couldn't be daunting in real time. You don't have time for that. Make the plan, execute the plan, combine that with thoughtful storytelling, whether you need to collaborate with other parts of your nonprofit organization or your team specifically. Figure out that cohesive narrative arc is from start to finish, and then go for it. Plan and execute, right? Take one long piece of form content, chop that into small bits, and use that through your social feeds. And then also, like, the biggest thing for me is don't go into Giving Tuesday or end of giving season without a plan for post engagement. And what does that mean? It can mean a lot of different things based on the size of your nonprofit and your mission. One of the big things we hear consistently is, well, we don't have enough people to uphold or do X, Y, or Z. Technology's come a long way. It doesn't give you the full answer, but it gets you 70%. But you can take it the rest of the 30 with your brand voice, your heart, your mission, what makes you you with those messages. I know it's what we do and help nonprofits use it. It's a no-brainer. Also, Morgan, digital high five for the aspect of letting people choose how they want to support your mission. It looks so different from every person, especially when you give out like things like Giving Tuesday is on the 28th of November. That's a couple days before payday. So people may not be ready to give, even if it's a $10 donation, until a couple days later. So you think about the engagement. They may want to share a story, though. They're going to contribute to the cause that they believe in and support. Give them engaging options. It's not just about money. And I will let me go. If you let me ramble on, I'll go on for another hour, but I think that covers 3 like don'ts. Don't go into Giving Tuesday with those. Don't overshare, spam, better plan, and have a plan for engagement post Giving Tuesday. in light of declining individual giving across the board, revenue for fundraising dollars, all that. It's cheaper to keep a supporter in place than it is to go find new ones too at the end of the day.
Wonderful. Thanks, Adam. All right. Very quickly, I'd like to remind our live audience to start submitting your questions at any time so we can address the topics that are relevant to you and your team. All right. Here's our next question. And Betsy, I'll have you start us off with this one. If nonprofits participated in past years, what key insights or lessons learned can nonprofits leverage to refine their strategies for this year's event?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Malu. So I think that one thing to really think about is, or one thing I'd want to say is that I think all of us here want to go ahead and recognize that some organizations might have a staff of one or none dedicated full time to fundraising. And so I want to acknowledge that and say that when you're looking at last year, really lean, obviously, on what works. And if that's all you have time to focus on, that's okay. So, I mean, I think that, a lot of what we're saying that is simple and can be done with a staff of any size. But if some of this does seem overwhelming, that's what I would say. So if you did a social media only, if you only had time for social media and maybe a little bit of email marketing, but that social media campaign really worked great, stick with it and maybe leave the email marketing to later on in December. If a phone-a-thon worked great and you really didn't have time to do any social media, that's okay. Maybe do something really brief on social media and lean into that phone-a-thon. Get more volunteers there. Likewise, if you did kind of a really great email marketing kind of all day, again, if you added that humor or you had these great opening lines and your subject heading and your open rates were looking really awesome, great. How can you do maybe one the day before, maybe even two that day? Do a second one if to those who didn't open it, and then follow up the next day. Call it a campaign, and that's okay. So I think it's really about putting your resources to what worked for you and where you saw success, and being okay with taking away some resources from platforms that just didn't do as great for you, and that's okay.
Wonderful. Thanks, Betsy. All right, Matt, on to you. For those who participated in past years, what key insights or lessons learned can they leverage to refine their strategies?
Thanks. Betsy and I should have compared notes because almost word for word I had in terms of my answer. So I will not repeat the excellent answer that Betsy gave. I think for me, one of the insights I picked up, so let's be honest, there's been nothing normal about the last 3.5 years. And so there is something around this Giving Tuesday that feels like a bit of a return to a space that allows us to do more, allows us perhaps to use the full arsenal of fundraising, techniques and methods at our disposal. It's still a very tough year. I will caveat with that, but it feels different to the three previous. I would suggest that over that time, we've seen a real big generational shift in giving. Millennials are now that bit older and have that much more disposable income. Gen Zs are now in the workplace en masse. And so there's a real sort of generational divide that touches across all of fundraising at the moment. And I think to piggyback on Betsy's point around doing what you can with the channels that are most effective, I would also say that about audiences too, and not feel like you have to be all things to all donors and all supporters. It might be that Giving Tuesday is an excellent opportunity for you to connect with one of your audiences and really lean into that. It might be your opportunity to engage with more Gen Z donors and lean into newer channels, or it might be the opposite and that you're looking to still connect with the retired generation, with the baby boomer generation. So to nicely piggyback off of Betsy's point, I think don't also feel like you have to be all things to all donors during this moment. It might be just a strategic time for you to tackle one audience, is what I would say.
Thanks, Matt. All right, Adam, over to you. Anything you want to add to this conversation and insights or lessons learned to refine strategies for this year's event?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it starts from a tactical perspective. When looking at it from a social media lens, take a look back if you can and see what popped off in terms of, hey, did this image on this post with this copy resonate? Did this video get engagement like we expected? Did this plain text copy actually be our best performing and most shared because it had an emotional story that people related to? Those are the things you can quickly kind of pull together and understand how to take those tactics that worked and pull them into your 2023 strategy. Again, storytelling being the arc. I'm going to keep going back to that because it's so critical. But then you can start to understand, coupled with the fundraising outcomes from last year. You say you raised X amount of dollars, this funded this mission or this specific project. Like those are all important things to harness and pull into your messaging arc. Start with where you were last year and what happened because of last year. Work your way forward, right? And that's all led through how do we deliver the message in the medium? Obviously, social media is a channel, but the medium, whether it be video, photos, plain text, or a mix, UGC, going back to user-generated content, or influencers, like that is really where I think you take what's been done in the past, keep that formula, but then start to improve it as you go through this year and into next.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adam. All right, Morgan, we want to hear from you as well. What insights should nonprofits leverage to refine strategies for this year's Giving Tuesday?
Absolutely. So what everyone is saying here is great. And like what Adam is saying, we have to have a plan, and it doesn't have to be this fancy strategic plan that's, all these documents, whatever. If you don't have a written out plan, I would just start a Google Doc, start a Word doc, whatever it might be, and start writing down what you're doing. And then right after Giving Tuesday, meet, if it's just yourself or your team, meet together and talk about what went well, what didn't go well. And then you're going to have some great notes for next year, because that's how you're just going to build off for every year. So, keeping track is huge. And then oftentimes I hear nonprofits go through this cycle of Giving Tuesday. They think they have to come up with a whole new creative theme every single year and change their messaging every single year. You don't have to. If it was successful last year, and even if it wasn't, maybe it was just a storytelling component. Maybe, you just, there was one thing that you need to tweak to make it more successful. You don't have to change your messaging every single year. So I would, especially if you're limited on time, don't let that be a big factor in not doing a Giving Tuesday. So don't feel like you have to change your theme or messaging every single year. And then just to keep in mind for my international nonprofits, and Matt hit this, on the nail on the head right at the very beginning, that not everything, every strategy is going to work for every country. So if you are in a different country outside of the US, talk to those other nonprofits around you that have participated in Giving Tuesday in the past and see, what's worked well for them, what challenges there have been, and figure out what's best for your community. So focus in on your community, because it can oftentimes be, you hear some great things happening over in the US or the UK, and you're based out in Africa. What's happening locally? Where are your donors based? And focus in that way too.
Thanks, Morgan. All right, Adam, here's our next question. In an age of digital fatigue, how can organizations keep their Giving Tuesday messages fresh and compelling year after year?
Yeah, I was sitting on this one. Is there really a such thing as digital fatigue currently? I would challenge no, because we're spending 2.5 hours a day on average on social media. How that breaks down, I think TikTok's trending upwards of like an hour and a half. YouTube's like 45 minutes to an hour. People on meta platforms are doing 30 minutes on Instagram and or Facebook. So like people are there. On top of that, I think the more important thing is to be thinking about the algorithms and how the social platforms are destroying our natural organic voice. I think I saw a snapshot yesterday that if you're good at content, maybe 2.2% of your total Facebook page following will see a post organically at any given point. That's kind of discouraging. Most probably are closer to 1%. You think about LinkedIn, same thing. They just went through an algorithm change that destroyed a large amount of the, we'll say the hacking of the algorithm, where you see posts go viral. Like that is no longer a thing. So what it comes down to, again, I'm a broken record, but storytelling. Be human. Like tell the stories that are human. tell them in ways that people connect with. Sure, yeah, ChatGPT is good, and I'm guilty of using it to make sure grammatically I'm good. But ultimately, I'm still the one that's pumping out the content. So, like, at the end of the day, do not remember why people choose to connect and follow and support your mission to begin with. It's that human element of there's a story that resonates. There's someone in my family or my network that I'm supporting them through this. Like, those are the things that are ultimately continue to drive, even in the midst of probably, we'll say, a flood of digital content. But that's what helps you stick out, is those human elements.
I love that. Thanks, Adam. All right, Morgan, any advice in keeping the Giving Tuesday messages fresh and compelling year after year?
Yeah, absolutely. My very first thing I wrote down too when I was taking notes, keep it human. So Adam, that's exactly right. I mean, and I think we are starting to lose it a little bit as I'm starting to work with more and more nonprofits. It's like, how would you, if you were having a conversation with a donor, how would you be speaking to them? And then is that what you are reflecting in your emails and your social media? So, that's what people need and want, is that human connection. Also, I would encourage you to, especially on Giving Tuesday, keeping it short and sweet. So can the donor understand where their donation is going to make an impact in the first 10 seconds, essentially? I would even say in the first couple seconds, because if they don't understand what you're asking right away, they're gonna lose you, and they're gonna move on and go on to the next cause that's asking, for money. So definitely keep it short and sweet. And then the last thing, this is more around kind of what Betsy talked about as well, is making sure that your donation checkout experience, whether that's on Facebook, whether that's an online platform, is optimized to its best ability. So how quickly can a donor make their donation? How effectively can it? Is it a really easy checkout experience when they go to your donation page, your brand out with your organization? Is it secure? Making sure you have a secure platform so that the donor can trust their donor experience when checking out. So making sure that donation experience is optimized to the best ability so that they actually carry through, because you just did all this work to get them through the doors and to get them to read your messaging. Making sure that they actually go through with that transaction is really important. Oh, and then last thing, sorry, there's one last quick thing that I want to touch on is the day of Giving Tuesday, as we keep on talking about, it is noisy, but in a good way. And some creative ways to stand against that noise is making sure that you're really active that day and showing behind the scenes as much as possible, going live on Facebook, going live on social media, whatever that might be. Behind the scenes shows the impact, right? So get beneficiaries involved, show the building that you're working at, whatever it might be. That behind the scenes can really help with that human connection.
Love that idea. Thanks, Morgan. All right, Betsy, anything you want to add with making sure that Giving Tuesday messages are fresh and compelling?
I think that we all agree it's about people. So I was actually just telling two different clients this morning, okay, so you're going to send out your emails, and then who's going to follow up and forward it to their friends, so it does. And again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in recognizing small resources. It doesn't mean that you have to send out one email from the organization and then create all these other different ones for your volunteers to send out. It's just that they might forward that email. Say, please choose 5 friends to forward this to. Please post this on your own social media. Because again, as Adam mentioned, who knows how the algorithms will work if the organization itself is posting something. But I do think that if it's somebody that if a board member posts it, their friends are likely to see it or to engage with it. So what does that peer-to-peer look like that day? Again, are you gonna challenge your board members or your volunteers to maybe raise a certain amount of money on that day, or get a certain amount of new donations in? I think that is really where it's going to come from, though. It's going to be that you need your people, your board, your friends, whatever, staff included. If you have staff, them too, to amplify kind of the standard message, to personalize it a bit. And that doesn't necessarily mean a ton of extra work. It's just that extra step where it's coming from somebody that the user, the recipient knows.
Thanks, Betsy. All right, Matt, final thoughts in keeping Giving Tuesday messages fresh and compelling.
Thanks, Malo. It's nigh impossible to follow these three brilliant people when you go last. I would agree and concur with Adam's point around challenging digital fatigue. For me, I think we're seeing digital saturation to the point around trying to stand out with creativity, the switching the algorithms that everyone has mentioned. You know, the first 10 years of social media, they were very network led. You know, if you had decent followers and you built out that community, you know, you knew your content would get there. We're now very much content led. And so the creativity point and the storytelling point, we'll keep hammering it home until this webinar ends, really stand out for me. And the other point, to piggyback on Morgan's point, instead of digital fatigue, I'm going to see it as digital impatience. And so making that process as smooth as possible, you capture them with the hook of the great story, of the great piece of content. You really need to make the next few seconds work as best as possible in that environment. We're all used to using Ubers. We're all used to using really, really fast, whatever version of food delivery you use in your country, because they're all different, but we're all used to that experience now, that one tap checkout. And I think as a sector, we need to, if we don't have the, you know, kind of the dollars and the pounds and the euros to invest in the way that those businesses do, but we do need to get as close as we possibly can to keep those smooth transactions, and Giving Tuesday being, you know, a spike in traffic around our donation forms, keeping that as smooth as possible, so we counter that digital impatience as much as we can.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. All right. This is the last of my questions before opening it up to our wonderful audience. So please submit your questions. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or in the questions tab so we can address the topics that are relevant to you and your team. All right. Before I open the door, I want to sneak in my next question. And Betsy, I'm going to have you start us off with this one. How can nonprofits strike a balance between emphasizing Giving Tuesday's significance and aligning it with their organization's unique missions and goals?
This is a really important question, because at the end of the day, the organization's work and mission and community is of utmost importance. And so I suggest you use Giving Tuesday as a kickoff to a larger kind of year-end campaign that is that is about your community. You know, focus on the community in a way that is honest, that shows your need, shows your case, is compelling to donors, but that keeps the organization at the forefront and the mission of the organization at the forefront of all messaging, of all of your platforms, and of everything you're doing. Again, so if you're nervous about not meeting a specific goal on Giving Tuesday, or that the focus is too much on the Giving Tuesday brand on that specific day, shift the way you look at the Giving Tuesday, and to where it does not have to be the end all be all of what you're doing for your fundraising in Q4, but rather it can be the day that you kick it off. If you've already kicked off your year-end campaign earlier in Q4, then it can be a day that you really bring your community together to celebrate the mission. But it's one piece of a bigger effort to raise resources, engage more community members, and raise awareness around your mission and the good work that you're doing in your community.
Thanks, Betsy. All right, Adam, over to you. Thoughts on how to balance emphasizing Giving Tuesday's significance and aligning it with mission and goals?
Yeah, hard to follow up because Betsy nailed it. It's the idea of Giving Tuesday, perhaps for some, has been thought of this like one and done day where like, let's get everything we can. But in all reality, it's a major, granted, a huge checkpoint in each nonprofit or most nonprofits' journey throughout the course of the year. But it also can be viewed very much as a springboard into ultimately understanding, what are my nonprofit's goals? Is it new donor acquisition? Is it reactivating existing donors? Is it getting engagement in my brand voice and mission out more? And then letting those feel into like, how are you going to approach it? Again, storytelling, I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but like establishing also the story arc of like, hey, this is what your dollars are going towards. I think I heard it mentioned multiple times of like, give people a very specific, succinct reason why they're giving. Is that to fund research? Is that to fund a mission? Is that to fund a new hospital? So like those types of stores are the things you think you can merge your goals with a very much a vision, a distinct, very specific mission, and go forward with that. And the combination of using it as a jumping off point for maybe the end of your giving, or really as you go into 2024, coming in hot.
Thanks, Adam. All right, Matt, you're up next. How to emphasize Giving Tuesday significance and while aligning it with mission and goals.
Thanks, Millie. Not to repeat Betsy and Adam, I'm going to come at it from a different angle. So I think this challenge of the not-for-profit sector having sort of a cyclical calendar to kind of react to is it's been with us for over 100 years. You know, in the UK fundraising market, we've always had Mother's Day and Christmas and Lent and, you know, and other religious festivals in the mix. And they've always felt like if we didn't take advantage of those opportunities, we would be missing out. So I do think Giving Tuesday represents just another one of those tentpole moments that can provide momentum, that can provide direction for us as organizations. I don't feel kind of the push and pull of it in kind of the same way. I think springboard is such a wonderful word that Adam used in terms of thinking about it. I had written down, ride the wave, ride the Giving Tuesday wave, you know, to achieve your aims and objectives kind of within it. I don't think it's a unique challenge just to Giving Tuesday. I think it has always been with us, like what part should we play in certain cyclical moments in a year? And I think to the point that the panel has made a number of times, what are your own goals? What are your own objectives as an organization and a fundraiser? Within that, it might be that you want to encourage, you know, 10 new people to volunteer for you over that period versus raising $1 million, you know. And I think both objectives and goals are as valid as each other. I think we just have to use it as the springboard, use it as the vehicle that it is, and not feel kind of overwhelmed by it coming along again. You know, I think it provides more opportunities than challenges. It would be my sign off.
Thanks, Matt. All right, Morgan, any additional thoughts in emphasizing Giving Tuesday significance and aligning it with mission and goals?
Yeah, just to conclude, I'm just going to kind of come from like a marketing perspective, and I'm just starting to see this a lot in branding, or the challenge of, okay, I have my organization's brand, and then now I have Giving Tuesday. How do I integrate that in one? And I think it's always really important to remember that donors give to impact. They're not giving to a number. They're not, if you're saying, you know, give or help us raise $20,000, it's not inspiring enough, right? They're giving to the organization's mission, to the impact. So making sure that you can still use Giving Tuesday in your messaging. For example, this Giving Tuesday, help us accomplish XYZ, or whatever that might be. And Giving Tuesday is there to help you with a sense of urgency, which is always helpful, but it's not your end all be all. So making sure that you're having your brand intact, that your messaging is there and very clear. And yeah, that when it comes to your actual visuals, I know that Giving Tuesday has some really great branding and Canva templates, things of that nature. In my opinion, I wouldn't make Giving Tuesday the shiny object in that marketing material. So yes, have it on there if you want. I was just reviewing a client's social media, and they had Giving Tuesday in huge text in the corner. They forgot their logo. They forgot where their donate website, all that stuff. So making sure that your brand is still intact. Yes, you can incorporate the Giving Tuesday logos. I would just keep it minimal and not have that be the end all be all.
Thanks, Morgan. All right, unbelievably, the hour is going by so quickly, so we're going to wrap up this portion of the panel so we can stick to our schedule. Now, if you ever have any questions for our panelists, please complete the survey that will be dropped in the chat to indicate which panelists you have questions for, and we will make sure to connect you with them after the session. I've had such a wonderful time hearing from our panelists today about Giving Tuesday, and I'm hoping to get one final piece of insight from them all. And Adam, I'll have you start us off with that. What do you see as the future for Giving Tuesday, and how can nonprofits get ahead today?
Yeah, it's a great one, and I'll take it more from like a perspective of this. Woodrow Rosenbaum, who's a chief data officer at Giving Tuesday, had a fantastic article that was in AFP's Advancing Philanthropy. I don't know if anyone has read that yet, It's a physical copy I was trying to find online. So if you have the link, send it to me. I can't find it. But he does just a phenomenal job going through and outlining. And to paraphrase this, nonprofits already have, for the most part, a winning Giving Tuesday playbook. They know what to run for the most part. They know the outcomes for the most part. And really the focus is on celebrating the generosity in all of its forms all year long. Like that's the future, right? And this goes back to the point of being human. Telling the stories that matter to the people that support your mission, and focusing less on what we'll say is major donors, major gifts as a reliance upon the bulk of our fundraising dollars throughout the year, and adopt the Giving Tuesday idea of like, hey, come one, come all. Let's give them, send the thank yous. Let's deliver those heartfelt messages no matter what medium that's done. Focus on building relationships and community with your supporters year round instead of just popping up in November, right? Understand the reason they support your mission. It's something that I don't see a whole lot of in the tech side of things is, are you providing the opportunity for people to share why the mission matters? Like that's just as critical to understand how to tell better stories, how to relay how your fundraising impacts the mission to go further, right? Finally, give value with no expectation of anything in return. Now, obviously, I realize that there are ways and things that need to happen to keep the lights on. But if you're going and approaching from that perspective and taking that value, amplifying across the year, of taking what you learn in Giving Tuesday and just going for it, I think that could be very much the future of philanthropy, of fundraising, not only digitally, but across the board, especially as you continue hearing the whole glum about decline of individual giving, decline of donor retention. There's a lot of what could be very negative, but maybe if we do a few certain human aspect things, we can start to shift that around pretty quickly. All right, that's mine.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Adam. All right, Matt, over to you. What do you see as the future for Giving Tuesday, and how can nonprofits get ahead today?
Just to say, I loved Adam's answer so much. He got me really fired up. My example around where I think things are going. So I think our world is much changed after the pandemic, and it is led to sort of a fracturing of society in loads of different ways. And I think there's something around Giving Tuesday where it could potentially start to bridge the generations of givers. And so I'll give you one example from last year where a not-for-profit client that I work with got a team of young volunteers to call a group of older donors. And so you had these lovely conversations between some volunteers in their 20s calling donors, you know, who are later on in life, having wonderful conversations. And then the icing on the cake was that they encouraged the older donors to write the young volunteers a thank you letter. It was just such a wonderful cross-channel, cross-generational sort of moment that made me feel all warm and fuzzy when I heard about it. I think that's just a really lovely example of how we could use this. We're blessed with, a plethora of powerful tools, incredible assets and platforms at our fingertips. But back to the human point, like how can we use some of those things and use the moment that is Giving Tuesday to perhaps bridge those generations and find a way to bring people together in this changed world.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. All right, Morgan, thoughts on the future of Giving Tuesday and how to get ahead today?
Yeah, they've said it all. I absolutely agree and could go on and on about it, but it's not going anywhere. That's for sure. Giving Tuesday is not going anywhere. We've seen the numbers. It's only increasing from here. If you're an international nonprofit and it's not yet as big where you are, it's going to get there. It's been so fun to watch, especially South African clients for the last 5, 6, 7 years working with how know what it was. And now it's becoming really popular. So if you're international, keep at it. I think it's only going to get larger from here. But what it comes down to is the key thing once you are done with this Giving Tuesday is how you are going to steward these donors, exactly what Matt and Adam says, but via human connection. So they remain a big part of your cause and they're a big part of your community. And then for next year, because we're a little too close to it, is start planning at least 3 months in advance. So get a head start, put a plan in place, reach out. There's, lots of people out there that can support you, lots of tools like Matt is saying out there that can support you for a successful campaign. But the key to success is having a plan. So.
Thanks, Morgan. All right, Betsy, over to you. What do you see as the future for Giving Tuesday and how to get ahead today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as everyone said, it's not going anywhere, right? The numbers show that Giving Tuesday is only like 11 years old officially, which is shocking that as a kind of branded day, that's all it is. And it's become well, maybe I'm biased because obviously I'm in the middle of the sector, but it really is becoming a day that is as recognizable in terms of a brand as Cyber Monday and Black Friday, and Shop Local Saturday, etc. And I think that is really, really great, because what it shows is that there is a desire for community and for people to kind of come together through philanthropy. And I think that there is a real interest in giving and engagement in altruism and kind of again, whether it's your giving of your money, of your time, of both, whatever it is, there's obviously an increased demand for that, especially as so many other things in our world are very difficult. And I think that is people want to come together and have common ground, both in a very hyper local way, with their neighbors and local nonprofits, but also in a global way. And I think Giving Tuesday is the way to do that. And so again, it's not going anywhere. And in terms of how your organization can really benefit from it, again, people. Leverage your volunteers, leverage your staff, leverage your board, your social media followers. Do what works for you, plan ahead, and make sure that no matter what, your mission of your organization and your programming is at the center of everything you're doing. So.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Betsy. All right. And with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights today. And I also want to give a big thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something that will benefit the work that you do on a daily basis. Now, we have a packed few months of panels ahead of us, and I hope that you will join us for them. So keep an eye out on the NXUnite website and on the NXUnite LinkedIn page to make sure that you don't miss out on any of these. All right, that is it for me. Once again, a big thank you to everyone for joining us, and have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone.